All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're cracking open what you could call a battlefield manual, the book of Ephesians, to really get a handle on its view of life as a constant, intense spiritual war. And right away, the text hits us with this core concept. The fight we're in isn't with other people. It's not a flesh and blood problem. No, this is a struggle against a whole unseen, organized spiritual hierarchy. Just that one idea completely changes the rules of engagement, doesn't it? So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll survey the battlefield. Then we'll get a clear picture of the adversary and their playbook. After that, we'll look at the gear, the divine arsenal you're given for the fight. We'll clarify your role, and finally, we'll talk about the endgame. Okay, first up, the unseen battlefield. The texts we're looking at are pretty clear. The Christian life isn't some peaceful stroll through a meadow. It's more like being deployed to a high-stakes active war zone. You know, there's a huge difference between what people often think and what the text actually says. The perception might be one of total peace and quiet, but the reality, according to these passages, is a state of a non-stop struggle. It's a serious business that demands you're always on alert.
So the text is super clear about who the enemy is, and maybe more importantly, who it isn't. The opponent is never another person. Instead, you see these terms: principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness. This all points to an organized, invisible, spiritual force.
All right, so knowing there is an enemy is one thing, but if you're going to be effective, you've got to know who you're up against and what their strategy is, and that's what we're diving into next. So check this out. The enemy's strategy is basically summed up in this one Greek word, methodia. And yup, it's exactly where we get our word method. This isn't about random, chaotic attacks. It's about a methodical, cunning, and strategic campaign that's built on deception. So what does this methodia actually look like? Well, the source material breaks down the playbook. It's stuff like planting seeds of doubt, stirring up persecution, sneaking false ideas into the church, and tempting people with things like pride and discouragement, anything to lead them off track. And to see just how effective these tactics are, the texts point to the history of Israel as a classic case study. From ancient idolatry to missing the Messiah when he was right in front of them, all the way to prophecies of a future deception, it's shown as this long-running, consistent pattern. And if you look at the different names for the adversary in the Bible, they each give you a clue about the strategy. Satan literally means adversary. Devil means slanderer. And then you've got titles like the tempter and the accuser. Each one describes a different job, a different angle of attack, which brings us to a huge turning point in the text. I mean, facing a cunning, strategic enemy sounds pretty overwhelming, right? But here's the thing. The passages are emphatic that a believer is never sent into this fight empty-handed, which leads us to section 3, the divine arsenal. And this is the foundation for the whole arsenal. The strength you need isn't about your own willpower or how tough you are. The text says it's found in the Lord. It's kind of a paradox, right? The power belongs to God, but it's given to you to use. His strength shows up best in our weakness. Okay, this next Greek word, enda asaste, is fascinating. It's the command to put on the armor, but it means so much more. It's this idea of putting it on once and for all. This isn't some uniform you just wear on Sundays or when you feel like you're in trouble. The point is, it's meant to be your permanent outfit until the war is over. So what is this armor? Here's the 6-piece loadout. It starts with truth, like a belt holding everything together. Then, the breastplate of righteousness to guard your heart. You get firm footing with the gospel of peace, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation to protect your mind, and finally, the sword of the Spirit. And here's something really important to notice. The first 5 pieces, all defensive. But that last one, the sword of the Spirit, which the text identifies as the word of God, that is the only offensive weapon in the entire arsenal. It's the one tool you use to go on the counterattack against deception. So you've got the armor. Now what? What are you actually supposed to do? And that brings us to our 4th section, which spells out the rules of engagement in 2 simple words: stand firm. Now, this is a really critical point. The sources are clear that nowhere are believers commanded to go out looking for a fight, to go on the offensive and attack the devil. The command is defensive. It's to hold your ground, to stand firm, and to resist. And this idea is captured perfectly in a verse from the book of James. It's a two-step process with a guaranteed outcome. Step 1, submit to God. Step 2, resist the devil. And what happens? He will flee from you.
But let's not miss the fine print here, because the order is everything. Submission to God isn't just a good idea, it's the absolute requirement. According to the text, your resistance only works after you have fully submitted to God's authority. You can't do step 2 without doing step 1 first. And that brings us to our final section, which really holds the central tension of this whole topic. If victory is assured, if the outcome is certain, then why is the fight described as being so long and so hard? Let's unpack this idea of an assured victory, but an enduring fight. The reason you can be sure of victory comes down to this one simple truth. The power of God that's in a believer is fundamentally greater than any opposing force in the world. That right there is the ultimate source of confidence in this battle.
See, the adversary isn't all-powerful. The sources point out very specific limits. His power to afflict is restricted by God. The temptations you face are limited. He knows when he's beaten and has to flee. And maybe most importantly, his time is running out.
But, and this is a big but, even though victory is guaranteed, the fight goes on. The text describes it as a lifelong marathon. The Apostle Paul at the end of his life didn't say, I avoided a fight. He said, I have fought a good fight, which tells you the struggle was real right up to the end. And this brings us right back to our core question. If the war is already won, why does the daily battle matter so much? The text seems to suggest that it's in that daily fight, in the choice to put on the armor, to stand your ground, to rely on a strength that isn't your own. That's where faith becomes real, where character is built, and where God's power is put on display. That's a tension we're thinking about.